The late afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of the old Victorian house on Elm Street, casting elongated shadows that danced like forgotten secrets across the polished hardwood floors. Eleanor Hawthorne sat at the grand mahogany dining table, her manicured fingers tracing the rim of a crystal wine glass. At 45, she was the epitome of refined elegance, pearl earrings dangling like teardrops, a silk blouse the color of fresh cream, and a smile that could disarm a room full of skeptics. Her younger brother, Jack, slouched in the chair opposite her, his flannel shirt rumpled from a day spent wrestling with the engine of his beat-up Ford pickup. At 42, Jack looked every bit the rugged handyman he had become. His hands calloused and stained with grease, his dark hair streaked with premature gray. It was Thanksgiving, or what passed for it in the Hawthorne family these days. Their parents had passed 5 years ago in a tragic car accident on the icy roads outside Boston, leaving behind a sprawling estate, a collection of antique furniture, and a fortune that had ballooned under their father's shrewd investments in real estate and tech startups. Eleanor, the golden child, had inherited the lion's share, the house, the stocks, the summer home in the Hamptons. Jack, he'd gotten a modest life insurance payout and a toolbox from their father's garage. It was all very civilized, or so the lawyers had assured him during the reading of the will. No hard feelings, right? Family was family. Eleanor lifted her glass, the ruby-red Cabernet swirling like liquid fire. "So Jack," she said, her voice smooth as velvet, laced with that patronizing lilt she reserved for him, "enjoying your 500,000 trust fund. I hear the markets are up this quarter. You must be patting that nest egg nicely." Jack froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, a piece of turkey dangling precariously from the tines. The room seemed to contract around him, the clink of silverware from the kitchen where their cousin Mia was washing dishes fading into a distant hum. Trust fund. A 500,000. His mind raced back through the fog of years. Lawyers in pinstripes, stacks of legal documents he'd barely skimmed, their mother's frail voice whispering about provisions for the future. But a trust fund. For him? The words tasted like ash on his tongue. "What trust fund?" he replied, his voice low and edged with disbelief. He set the fork down with deliberate care, as if afraid it might shatter. Eleanor's laugh tinkled like wind chimes in a breeze, light, melodic, utterly insincere. She leaned forward, her diamond necklace catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows across the tablecloth. "Oh, come on, Jack. Don't play coy. Daddy set it up years ago, remember. For your endeavors." She waved a hand vaguely, as if his life as a contractor fixing leaky roofs and busted plumbing was some quaint hobby. "It's been disbursing quarterly since the will was settled." "You mean to tell me you've been living hand to mouth all this time without touching it?" Jack's stomach twisted. He hadn't. He couldn't have. The bank statements in his glove compartment showed a balance hovering just above broke, month after month. Child support for his ex-wife's endless appeals, medical bills from his bad back, the down payment on a plot of land he'd lost to foreclosure last spring. It all added up to a life of scraping by. If there was a trust fund, it was as real to him as a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. Invisible. Untouchable. "I don't know what you're talking about, Elle," he said, forcing a chuckle that came out more like a cough. "If I've got $500,000 sitting pretty somewhere, it's news to me. Maybe the lawyers forgot to send the memo." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, just a fraction, the mask of sisterly affection slipping like a poorly tied cravat. She set her glass down with a soft clink and reached for her phone, scrolling through it with the efficiency of someone used to bending the world to her will. "Let me check. I have the estate files digitized. Ah, here it is. Hawthorne Family Trust Sub, account JH established 2010, funded with 500,000 upon father's passing. Disbursements to Wells Fargo account ending in 4782. Ring any bells?" Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. That account number. It was his old checking account, the one he'd closed 3 years ago when the bank fees had started eating him alive. He'd opened a new one at a credit union, but the lawyers, God, had they been sending checks to a dead address? Or worse, had they been sending them? And someone else had been cashing them. Mia poked her head in from the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, sensing the shift in the air like a dog catching a scent. "Everything okay in here? Dessert's almost ready. Pumpkin pie with that bourbon whipped cream you love, Jack." "Fine, Mia," Eleanor said briskly, not looking up. "Just catching up on finances. Jack's apparently been too busy building other people's dreams to manage his own." Mia shot Jack a sympathetic glance and retreated. Leaving the siblings in a bubble of thickening tension, Jack leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. "Show me the proof, Elle. Not just some PDF on your phone. If this money's mine, where's it gone? Because I sure as hell haven't seen a dime." Eleanor's fingers paused on the screen. For the first time that evening, a flicker of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed her features. "It's probably just a clerical error. You know how these things are. I'll have my accountant look into it Monday. In the meantime, eat your turkey before it gets cold." But Jack wasn't hungry anymore. The meal dragged on in strained silence, punctuated by Eleanor's anecdotes about her latest gala in Manhattan and Jack's non-committal grunts. By the time coffee was served, he was already plotting his exit, mumbling excuses about an early job site in the morning. As he shrugged into his coat in the foyer, Eleanor appeared at the top of the stairs, her silhouette framed by the warm glow of the chandelier. "Jack," she called softly, descending with the grace of a queen. "About the trust. I didn't mean to rub it in, it's just, I've been managing the estate solo for so long. Maybe I overlooked forwarding the statements." He paused, hand on the doorknob, the cool brass grounding him. "Overlooked, or something else?" Her smile returned, brittle as autumn leaves. "You're my brother. I'd never. Save it, ill." He pulled the door open, the November chill rushing in like an uninvited guest. "I'll handle it myself. Happy Thanksgiving." The drive home was a blur of sodium-lit streets and half-formed suspicions. Jack's one-bedroom apartment above his workshop smelled of sawdust and stale coffee, a far cry from the Hawthorne manse. He booted up his ancient laptop, the fan whirring like an asthmatic beast, and logged into every financial portal he could think of. Nothing. No alerts, no deposits, no phantom riches. By midnight, frustration had morphed into a cold resolve. Time to dig deeper. The next morning, nursing a black coffee and a headache from too little sleep, Jack called the family lawyer's office. Mr. Hargrove, a silver-haired relic with a voice like gravel, sounded surprised to hear from him. "Mr. Hawthorne! What can I do for you?" "The trust fund," Jack said without preamble. "The 500,000 one my sister mentioned. Eleanor says it's been paying out quarterly to an old account of mine. But I've got nothing to show for it." A pause, papers rustling on the other end. "Trust fund. Let me pull the file. Ah, yes. Established by your father in 2010 as a safety net for you, vested upon his death. Disbursements began immediately. Fen $10,000 every 3 months, with the principal intact unless withdrawn for emergencies." Jack's grip tightened on the phone. 40,000 a year. For 5 years. That's 200,000 gone. Where the hell is it? "According to the records, it's been deposited into the specified account. Wells Fargo. Last 44782. Have you checked recent statements? I closed that account years ago. No forwarding." Another rustle, longer this time. "Curious. The bank confirms the deposits cleared, but there's activity. Withdrawals, transfers, all authorized via power of attorney." "Power of attorney?" Jack's voice rose an octave. "I never signed anything like that." "No, sir. It was granted to your sister, Eleanor, as co-trustee. Standard procedure for family estates to manage if the beneficiary is unavailable." Unavailable. The word hung in the air like smoke. Eleanor with her board meetings and charity luncheons, managing his windfall. Jack's mind reeled. Had she been dipping into it for her lifestyle, or worse, investing it in schemes that benefited her portfolio? The Hamptons house needed a new roof last summer. She'd complained about it endlessly. By noon, Jack was in Hargrove's office, a leather-bound ledger of Betrayal spread before him like a coroner's report. The withdrawals were methodical. A 15,000 here for state maintenance, the 20,000 there for family obligations. Eleanor's signature, elegant loops and flourishes, stared back at him from every page. And there, buried in the fine print of the trust agreement he'd signed in a daze after the funeral, a clause allowing the co-trustee to act in the best interests of the beneficiary, if deemed necessary, vague enough to drive a fleet of limos through. "It's theft," Jack growled, slamming the folder shut. "Plain and simple." Hargrove adjusted his glasses, sympathetic but cautious. "Civil matter at best. Proving intent. That's tricky with family. But you can petition to dissolve the trusteeship, demand an audit. I'll start the paperwork." Jack left the office with copies clutched under his arm. A fire kindled in his chest that hadn't burned since he was a kid building forts in the backyard with Eleanor, back when she shared her dolls instead of her secrets. He drove straight to the bank, where a stone-faced teller confirmed the account's dormancy, but not before the deposits had been rerouted to a joint holding under Eleanor's name. For liquidity, the notes read, Rage simmered as he sped back to Elm Street. The house loomed like a judgmental sentinel, its turrets piercing the slate, gray sky. Eleanor answered the door in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, her hair in a flawless ponytail as if she'd been expecting him. "Jack! Back so soon. I was just about to call." "Save the act," he said, thrusting the printouts at her. They fluttered to the Persian rug like fallen leaves. "You've been stealing from me. 5 years, my money, my future. For what? Another Birkin bag. That yacht club membership you bragged about at Christmas." Her face paled, but she recovered with the poise of a diplomat. "Stealing? That's dramatic. I was protecting you. You with your dead-end jobs and that gold-digging ex who bled you dry. The money was safe with me, invested wisely. It's grown to $650,000 now. You'll thank me one day?" "Thank you." Jack laughed, bitter and hollow. "I could have used it for my kids' college fund, or that business I wanted to start. Instead, I'm drowning in debt while you play Lady Bountiful." Eleanor's eyes flashed, the sister he'd known giving way to the corporate shark. "You were always the screw-up, Jack. Daddy knew it. That's why the trust. I did what he would have wanted, kept it from your reckless hands." The words landed like punches. Reckless. He, who had changed their mother's bedpans during her cancer treatments while Eleanor jetted off to Paris. He, who had buried their father with a handmade casket lid because the funeral home quoted too high. "Daddy trusted me enough to leave it to me." Jack shot back. "Not you. You're just the gatekeeper who picked the lock." Mia, drawn by the raised voices, hovered in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Guys, let's not." But Eleanor whirled on her. "Stay out of it, Mia. This is Hawthorne business." Jack shook his head, the fight draining out of him like air from a punctured tire. "No more I'm filing the suit. Audit, restitution, the works. And if there's a cent missing, I'll see you in court." He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold, glancing back at the woman who had once braided his hair and shared secrets under the covers during thunderstorms. "I thought we were family. Guess the trust fund was the only thing holding us together." The door clicked shut behind him, a sound as final as a gavel. Weeks blurred into a whirlwind of depositions and discovery. Hargrove's team unearthed emails, Eleanor directing funds to her, philanthropic ventures, a glossy term for funneling money into her nonprofit that conveniently employed her friends. The principal had indeed grown, but siphoned streams had watered her garden while his lay fallow. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a Boston accent thick as chowder, ordered a full accounting and froze the assets pending resolution. Eleanor fought dirty, as Jack should have expected. Private investigators dug into his past, the DUI from a decade ago, the custody battle he'd lost. Her lawyer painted him as the ungrateful prodigal, squandering potential while she stewed in stewardship. The tabloids picked it up. Harris sued by Blue, collar brother. Trust fund tussle turns toxic, and suddenly Jack's quiet life was dissected under spotlights he never asked for. But Jack had allies he hadn't counted on. Maya, the cousin who'd always been the family's quiet glue, came forward with old letters from their father. "He worried about you both," she testified softly in the marble halls of the courthouse. Eleanor, too proud to ask for help, Jack too stubborn to take it. The trust was his way of balancing the scales. And then there was Sarah, Jack's ex, who showed up unannounced one rainy afternoon at his workshop. Her hair was shorter now, laugh lines etched around her eyes, but the fire was still there. "Heard about the lawsuit," she said, handing him a thermos of soup. "Figured you could use some backup. For what it's worth, I was wrong to drag you through the mud back then." They talked for hours, the past uncoiling like a knotted rope. By the time the rain stopped, something had shifted. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a truce. And when the gavel fell 2 months later, the judge ruled in Jack's favor, full restitution of $300,000, accounting for administrative fees Eleanor had claimed, dissolution of her trusteeship, and a mandated family mediation. Eleanor didn't attend the session. She sent a check and a note. "For the best. Let's not speak ill." Jack cashed it, but the victory tasted bittersweet. He used the money wisely, paid off debts, seeded a small contracting firm specializing in eco-friendly renovations, and set aside a chunk for his son's education. The boy, now 16 and spitting image of his uncle, grinned when Jack showed him the paperwork. "Does this mean I get a trust fund too, Uncle Jack?" "Nah, kid," Jack said, ruffling his hair. "Better, financial literacy classes, and maybe a toolbox." As spring thawed the New England frost, Jack found himself back at the old house, not for confrontation, but closure. Mia had inherited it after Eleanor's hasty sale to fund her legal fees, turning it into a community center for at-risk youth. Jack volunteered on weekends, teaching woodworking to kids who reminded him of his younger self, rough edges, hidden potential. One Saturday, as sawdust swirled in sunbeams, a familiar Mercedes purred up the drive. Eleanor stepped out, slimmer somehow, her designer coat replaced by a simple wool one. She hesitated at the gate, then approached, eyes scanning the renovations with a mix of pride and pain. "Jack," she said, voice stripped of its polish. "I sold the Hamptons place. Starting over in the city, consulting. Less excess." He nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "Good for you. Maya's pie is legendary, by the way. Fridays." A ghost of a smile. "Maybe I'll try it sometime. No apologies, no tears. Just a bridge extended, rickety but real." Jack watched her drive away, the sun glinting off her taillights, and felt the weight lift, not entirely but enough. Family wasn't a trust fund or a will. It was the messy accrual of debts and graces, paid in full not by lawyers but by time. In the quiet of the workshop that evening, Jack poured himself a drink. Not wine but a cold beer from the mini fridge, and raised it to the empty room. "To the Hawthorns," he toasted. "May our funds always be trusted, and our trusts mended." And for the first time in years, the shadows on the floors seemed to dance with possibility.